Hello and welcome back, David from Atomic Candy and the lovely and talented Miss Lady Pop Hunter, as always. Love it when she's here. She's my best friend. So, the future of Funko.
One possible future. From your point of view, I don't know tech stuff.
Future
No.
looks bleak.
Well, yes and no.
Future's so dark. I gotta wear shades. How does it go?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
The future's so bright I have to wear
Yeah, I had
shades.
okay. No,
That's how that
that
goes.
doesn't fit. I take that back.
Now, there's a few points that we wanted to touch on, and we're not here to bash Funko, okay? But it is a very prominent subject in pop culture right now because of how much attention it gets on account of how much product it produces and how much money it's making or appears to be making.
Yeah.
Because keep in mind, as much as they make, they owe. That was one of the big problems with their stock to begin with, was people were like, you know, okay, great, you make 450 million a year or whatever, but you owe 389 million. Where's the profit?
Yeah.
It's a good question. You know, people were really standoffish and their stock tanked, but their stock has seen a jump in the last couple of months. Actually, in the last month or so, it's gone up about $10. And there's reasons for this. It looks good, but it's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, it's great if you bought it when the stock was down to like 560.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's that fantastic of a thing. And right now, actually, close of business Friday, it was at 1672.
That's pretty good.
Now, the arguments for Funko, okay, people sit there and say, well, they have so many franchises. So does Pez. So does everybody. You know, everybody can get those franchises. They just have to be willing to pay a percentage.
Right.
Anyone can get franchises, except apparently they can't get Nintendo.
But Nintendo not giving it
eventually, you know, something will be worked out. I'm sure it's probably that Nintendo doesn't want to, because they've licensed to other people. They're probably an expensive license. But eventually, any company can license with anybody as much franchising as they can handle or as much franchising as they want. And a lot of people are under this misconception that they're going to go on forever and ever and ever because they have all these franchising options. That's not necessarily so. Oh, well, the other argument is that Funko, they've been around for 20 years. Not exactly. Although the company has been in business since 1998, so technically this is their 20th anniversary. They were virtually unknown for a very long time, and Pops, which is their most popular product, were not produced until 2010. Not only that, but Pops weren't popular. They sat on clearance racks all over the place, selling for $1 or less. And I bet a lot of you wish you had picked them up then, because those are the ones that are worth something now. Funko Pops were not popular and weren't a moneymaker until 2015, which means less than 3 years. So all of the rest of Funko's history is like, okay, you could say the same thing about Kenner, or, you know, Kenner was like, you know, nobody cared about Kenner until they made Star Wars figures, and that was their big cash cow. Right now, Pops are Funko's big cash cow. So what's the deal with the stock? The stock, primarily propaganda. Follow the numbers. And we're going to take a look at a couple of charts here, and I pulled these out, and you see where I stopped at. You see where it says 709? January 22nd, 709. That is the premiere of their documentary. It
was in January?
January 22nd.
Oh, I thought it was later than that. I thought it was more like in the spring or something.
Well, you're thinking of Netflix. But the premiere was there at 709, and you can see it had been hovering around $7. Then, on February 20th, or actually February 18th, if I'm not mistaken, was the New York Toy Fair, where they made their announcements. $7.20. There's only an 11-cent difference between from January all the way to July 22nd. Think about that. So January 22nd to July 27th, it's low, but you can see that there started to be a climb. Where does that climb really top off? 977 on May 24th, the day of the Netflix premiere. And then if you see the chart, it continues to go up from there to where it is now. The purpose of that documentary wasn't really a documentary.
No.
It was propaganda. It was propaganda for, hey, it's a brilliant marketing scheme.
Conspiracy theories.
It's a brilliant marketing scheme. The idea was not to reach out to people who already know something about Funko. That documentary was for everyone else, because there's no negative in that documentary. A real documentary shows highs and lows. There's no low points in that documentary. That's for all the people that were on the fence who sat there and said, the hell is this Funko crap anyway? It's a little blob of vinyl. Who gives a crap? Why is it so expensive? Those are the people that were reaching out to, and it worked. All right. So now you have like a $10 jump in the stock in a period of like less than a month. Really, it just flew. But now you have all these people on board who may be on board for the wrong reasons. They're not really into Funko Pops. They either want to flip them and sell them, or they want to sit on them like a stock, thinking that they're going to be worth a fortune because the pre-2015 Funko Pops from back when they were barely making them have gained a considerable amount of value. These are not the people you want in collecting. This means that if anything goes wrong with Funko or Funko Pops, half the people out there collecting them don't really give a crap, and they're going to flood the market with them to get rid of them before they tank. And that's going to drive things down even harder.
Well, from my experience, because I did the stock market for a while, and the one thing I know about the stock market, if you're new to the stock market, you're going to jump off board real fast. When stuff starts getting shaky, when it looks like it's starting to get dim and dark, you're gonna jump off ship. But people that's been in the stock market for a long time, they just go with the highs and the lows. They just stick with it until it finally levels off. So all of a sudden, like he said, in May, you got this huge surge in the market. Those people most likely are not like, I guess, experienced or seasoned investors, stock investors, because it was like, oh, let me jump on board so I can make some quick cash. They're like the day traders when that was a big thing. You make your money real quick and you get out. And like, if I was doing it now, honestly, I would have bought it when it was at the $5. Now it's at, what you say,
16.72.
That's almost three times. I would have been pulled out by now.
And an example of that, what you're talking about, some of you might have seen what happened to Facebook last week, also Friday, was because Facebook announced what everybody pretty much knew already, that their advertising doesn't work. They admitted it openly. They said, hey, our advertising, because people, you don't really watch the ads on Facebook, do you? You ignore them or you click through them or whatever. And they admitted, yeah, we realized this is what's happening. In an hour that morning, they lost 20% on their stock.
And that's a lot of money.
That's massive when you're talking about that kind of money. When you're going from like from over $210 to like $164 in an hour. That is desperate. But that's what happens. People are like, oh, no, get out of here. And that could eventually happen with Funko as well.
Right. And then, we were talking about how they like to play games and stuff. And
we mentioned a little bit of that in the last video about because people know, that you get frustrated running around chasing pops, trying to find them a target. They're never there, whatever. They play games with their consumers, but they do the same thing to the vendors as well.
Right. But then another thing that they were doing, like last year, they weren't really coming out with anything good. That they were coming out with a lot of stuff, but it wasn't really a lot of stuff that people wanted. Then it started dipping. They came out. They thought they was going to do this big thing with the stocks. It didn't do well. Then all of a sudden, oh, we have some products that people were asking for years.
Yes.
They got back to the Masters of the Universe.
That's right.
They got back to other lines that they had drifted off from a long time ago. And what happened? People's interest got peaked up again because people were already starting to pull out and say, you know what, I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. So that's another game that they play and say, okay, we're going to hold off on stuff.
If you ever wondered why it is, because a lot of people sit there and say, hey, what happened to The Simpsons? Hey,
Yeah.
what happened to Masters of the Universe? You haven't made one in 5 years
Right.
or whatever. I think a lot of times they sit on those licenses, those cash cow licenses, so that when things start to dip, they could turn around and pull it back to reel you back in. When people get frustrated, start walking away.
Yeah. And they got some more. Just think about some licenses. Like people were asking for some of those old Mickey Mouse. All of a sudden, you got 6 of them coming.
Well, that is the 75th anniversary coming up, though.
Yeah.
For Disney.
90th, actually.
Oh, was it not? Did I say 75? I don't know what I'm talking about.
And then, you know, you have, like you said, the Masters. You had the Looney Tunes. They brought that out. You know, it's just some things that they keep pulling out when it seems like, okay, we're starting to go under. Let's pull some stuff out. And people are going to get wise to that. And if you notice, we were talking about the recent Comic-Con, and normally with the past ones, flippers buy the products and the prices stay up for months. This time,
they're coming down a little faster.
They're coming down really fast.
Yeah.
It's what, like a week and a half, a week away from, you know, the Comic-Con was like a week ago or whatever, and the prices are already dropping on some of the big items. Some, not all, but the majority of them, the prices are already dropping, where in the past it took a little longer.
Yeah, and like what we were talking about also, I mentioned a little bit there, they play a lot of games with their vendors as well. There is definitely a priority with vendors. And, you know, to a degree, it makes sense because, you know, you want to pay the most attention to the vendors that are going to bring you the most money, but not to the extent where you're going to ignore or even basically punish smaller vendors and cancel their orders without warning or things like that. Like we've mentioned, that's why Continuum Toys is gone, because they had a bunch of their orders canceled and they had pre-orders out everywhere, and they're like, oh Jesus, what are we supposed to do?
And then also when you go to these stores, I know when we started doing Pops, you would go to the stores, Walmart, Target, GameStop, FYE, and they had a massive collection.
Yeah.
I mean, FYE, they had the huge stores, and almost half of it was Funko Pop. Now, and GameStop was the same way.
Like
they had
a
huge, they have this narrow shelf. So even they're starting to scale back because the products wasn't moving, and you have to buy shelf space. And it's like, why sell all this shelf space when the stuff doesn't move, and we can get other items in here that will move, that will sell. So a lot of the stores are starting to pull back.
No, something that we've brought up several times. It's like, you know, the pop bubble, it will burst eventually. You know, it happens to all toy lines where after a while the interest just wanes. It happened actually very quickly with Masters of the Universe, the original Masters of the Universe line. The strength of it was really only 2 years, and then interest dropped off, and then they went back to it, and it's all the nostalgic people like Lady Pop Hunter who reached back and got interested in like the Classics series and the Super 7 and stuff because it means something to them. But back then, it tanked after 2 years, really.
Yeah, and all of them, Star Wars tanked. They switched.
Yeah, they went from 77 to like the mid 80s or so after Empire, and then it just started to wane, you know, and that was, you know, a good 10, 12-year run there.
Yeah.
But still,
yeah,
it runs out. And when they tried to bring it back, when they had the 90s series, it didn't work. How many of those like second trilogy action figures can you find all over the place dirt cheap because nobody's buying them?
That's the ones you give away. We used to give them away
I
at
did.
it was a toy show we used to go to, and they say bring.
They had a charity bin.
Yeah, everybody in line had those
They had the
Star
Star
Wars
Wars
figures.
figures from the 90s.
Nobody wanted it. You can't sell it.
Nobody
Even
wants
if
that
you're
Jar Jar
selling it
Binks
for
figure.
$1. Because I've seen them at yard sales, thrift stores. People won't buy that, so what do you end up doing? You give it away to charity.
But yeah, there's a life to everything, and the Funko Pops are going to have a life too, and eventually the interest is going to start to drop off, and the values are going to go down. It happens with all of these, or the earlier ones. If I was going to hold out on anything, it would be the pre-mass production era or before 2015. So that the Pops between 2010 and 2015 stand the greatest chance of not losing any value.
Yeah.
They might still even go up more, because these are the older ones. There weren't very many of them. A limited edition actually was a limited edition. There's so many being produced now. Like they're talking about Pikachu. They've already cranked out 54,000 of these things. There might be more, and that's a Target exclusive.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why Funko keeps trying to come out with something new over and over and over again. They had the Hikaris, they had the Hikari Minis, they had the Dorbs, they had the blocks.
They had the rock candies. The skateboard, T-shirt.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about vinyl collectibles. But
Oh no, they have those action figures too.
Yeah, they have the action figures that they're coming out with. They've come out with. They got the Target exclusive figurines. They've got the new 5-star now. All of that is an effort by Funko to get ahead of the curve for when the Pops start to back off. Because that is their cash cow. It's really 90+% of their income is coming from those Funko Pops.
And that's, like I said, I think it's already starting to back off, because just looking at the stuff that you see online, it is just so much, and how the prices have dropped drastically, and people are starting to just not be that interested. And I've had people tell me, and I've read other blogs where people are like, I'm just not into this anymore. It's not fun anymore because of all of the hoops you have to jump through just to get something. And then this past Comic-Con, a lot of people were upset, especially with that Fun Day giveaway, not being able to get everything they wanted. Half of the stuff ended up being online at the Funko shop, and then you weren't able to get it, so now you got to go
aftermarket. There's plenty for sale aftermarket. Right.
So all of those things, they add up, and people remember them, and they're like, you know what, I don't want to deal with that. I do not want to deal with that anymore. So.
But the thing with them coming out with all these different lines to try to get the jump on when interest in Pops wanes off, they could end up sabotaging themselves too.
Yeah.
Because what if something that they put out, like just for example, the latest thing is the 5-star. What if that really jumps off, and then Pops interest just tanks?
Yeah.
Then they've got all these Pops in production. They have all this equipment, all these molds, the factories that have to be retrofitted. That if they sabotage themselves that way, it could be devastating for the company financially. And I don't know if they're thinking that far ahead. It's like, do you really want to cut yourself off, or do you want to hold something in reserve? Because it leaves the door open for another company to be able to jump in there if they've got something they've been holding back on.
Yeah, and then they have to be able to predict when they need to be able to see that, okay, they're starting to go downhill and they're not climbing. So now it's our time, because you can't wait until they totally fall, because it takes time for production and getting everything out. So you have to be chomping at the bit, waiting to, here's my time, because it's all about timing. That's the whole thing with marketing and sales. It's all about that timing and that consumer need, and meeting that need and that want.
The the other thing that they do that's been really irritating people, oh, well, everybody knows this though, is all of the limited editions and
Oh
limited
yeah.
number runs. We were just talking about it with especially the conventions. There's only 1,000 of these. There's only 2,500 of those, and there's only so much of that you can tolerate. And then you just
Yeah.
want to get out of it because you feel like you can never complete a set.
Right.
If you're a completist, and most collectors are, you want to be able to run everything down. How can I run something down if there's only 1,200 of them? It's painful.
Yeah, and then you'd have things like the Toy Tokyo exclusives, like that Ram Man, for an example. Okay, I can understand Toy Tokyo exclusive when the stuff is like for the Asian pops or even the Asian characters or even the Dragon Ball Z. I can kind of understand that. But then you're gonna have a figure where all of the other ones you were putting out for the masses, and then Toy Tokyo makes everything hard for you to get anyway. So now it's like almost impossible to complete your set because you use that venue to put out a set that's already popular and people have been waiting on. Instead of making it a store exclusive, why couldn't the Broly or something, or one
That
of
was
those
Hot Topic.
Sailor Moons or something that fits with the anime, go to Toy Tokyo is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
I don't think they specifically are anime though. I think they just call it Toy Tokyo.
Still, it would have fit.
But that's they've really got like their finger on the pulse of that artificial demand model, and that's what I talk about all the time, because when you can't get what you want, you often will settle, which is a mistake to do that. And
especially
I think
in collecting.
Yeah, and I think the biggest that lesson wasn't learned with Playmates.
Yeah.
I could say, because you remember Playmates used to make Star Trek figures. They started off with Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then they started making all these Playmates figures after Galoob dropped the ball because their figures were crap. But they made better figures. Everybody remembers this. They made a lot of them. They made over 420 action figures, plus play sets, plus other stuff. But then they had the 1701 series and pissed everybody off. And the 1701 series was basically Playmates experimenting with the idea of doing chases. So randomly in cases that were shipped to the stores would be a figure that there was only 1,701 of. So all these people that had like 420 plus action figures couldn't complete their set. And Playmates got a mountain of complaints, so much so that they surrendered their license. They say, "Hey, we're sorry we did that. We don't mean to piss anybody off," and they walked away from the Star Trek line, and it was picked up by other companies. But this is an idea that Funko has like mastered, because they got so many different runs going at once with different numbers on them. If you can't get this one, then you'll go run over and get that one. And people will do stuff like that to satisfy the fact that they didn't get what they want, and to complete a set that they don't need to complete. Now, there was a guy, we saw his video. I'm not going to name him because I'm not trying to pick on him, but he does the mystery boxes.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of mystery boxes, and he went on a hunt, and he's showing that he had bought those. What is the name of that movie with Oprah Winfrey, the new one?
Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, that's it. He went out and he bought Wrinkle in Time pops, right? And he's like, I really don't like these. I don't like these, but in the mystery box, they gave him one, which he also didn't like, because he didn't like the movie and he didn't like the pops. But since they gave him one in the mystery box and he paid for it anyway, may as well go out and get the rest of them and complete the set. Why? Why? You don't like, you're sitting there saying, I hate these, but you're still going to buy the whole set so you can have a complete set of them. You're not happy.
No, and they take up space. So I think Wrinkle in Time is 3 It's 3 pops
3 pops
in
and
a set,
and a
in
3-pack.
a 3-pack. That's 3 spots being taken up where you can put something you like.
Mhm.
That's money you're wasting when you could have spent the money on a pop you like. You know what I mean?
Trade it or sell it or give it away.
Give it away or something you don't want it.
But there's a lot of people that will force feed themselves this stuff, and ultimately they don't even want it. They don't want it. They don't like it. And there's a lot of consumer complaints about quality and packaging, paint jobs, and about not being able to complete sets is a big one. Obviously, I was upset about not being able to get the banana splits, but I'm not going to kill myself to get it either. If you're more upset than you are satisfied, it may be time to back off.
Yeah. And then don't just buy something, because I know, especially if you got to travel to go to a store that sells the pop that you want. Like, let's say is a Target exclusive out there and the closest Target to you is 20 miles away. So you drove those 20 miles and they don't have it. You don't have to buy something else.
Yeah, and a lot of people
justify
will. I gotta get something.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You've already expended time and energy and money also, because you got to pay for the fuel.
Yeah.
It all adds up, and it's something that a lot of people don't think of. But a lot more people are going to start getting that mentality. They're going to start getting that concept, and that's going to hurt Funko too. Yeah,
and I mean, we go out, but we go out toy hunting, not for a particular pop. We used to, but now if we're just out in the mall, we'll go to the stores. But we're not going to say, okay, next Saturday we're going to just drive around all over Atlanta looking for pops. We used to, but we don't anymore. Now I go online, really, and I buy the majority of them. Sometimes I'll get them out of stores if I'm in the store and they have it. And then, like I said in another video, and I have to put together one showing, but I found 2 online stores that sells store exclusives, and you can pre-order. So if Target has something, I'm not going to Target. I'm going to go online, and I'm going to try and find it.
Because
I'm not going to drive that far.
Sometimes paying that shipping is cheaper
than paying all that
around.
Gas and driving out there. And then again, you don't find it. So now you feel like, well, I got to get something because I came out.
Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're not trying to bash Funko necessarily. It's just we're just being honest about how we feel about it. About all of that, and about Funko is not going to be here in 200 years. All of these toy companies will have been bought out or traded hands by then.
Yeah.
It's the newer stuff is not going to continue to gain value because there's too much of it being made, and it's spreading itself too thin. It will eventually lose interest, like all things do. You don't want it. If you're a diehard, it's sad to see it go, but it does. There's a lot to be said there, and to a degree, we almost do kind of encourage people to back off a little bit, because from listening to a lot of them, they're not happy. Yeah. They're not happy with what they're doing. If they're not happy with it, you need to find something else. Find something else.
And I mean, we still collect. I mean, I collect Funko, and I'm going to continue as long as they put out things that I like. And if I don't like it, I'm going to complain about it. But as long as they put out products that I like, I am going to get it. I don't get as much as I used to. Well, I never really got a lot because I don't collect a lot of different lines like DC and Marvel, Star Wars, and those are the bigger ones. Game of Thrones, those stuff. I don't collect those anyway. So the ones I do, it's not that much.
Yeah.
It's just a lot. Like Aladdin has a lot in it, and it's a new one.
So. Yeah, and that's why I dropped off a lot of things too, like Tekken, for example. I wanted to get the Tekken set. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. But then I looked over at my Street Fighter set, which I can never complete. and said, do I want to go through that with Tekken? And I decided not to do it, and I didn't get anything from the Tekken series because Street Fighter, every time you're done with it, they come out with more figures, and it gets more and more expensive. The that Chase Ryu is like $130, $140. I'm not paying that for a Funko Pop. I won't do it.
No, you got to put a cap.
Yeah, you should have a cap. You should have a limit. But I mean, just in lieu of the discussion, the future of Funko, I mean, that is the future. And there is a bleakness to it. Some of it's bright and some of it's rather bleak. Because it's bright in that, they're on a roll right now.
They're on a roll right now.
But it's bleak in that eventually that roll is going to slow down and it's going to grind to a stop. And when it does, do you want your collection to have a bunch of stuff that you really like, that even if it goes down in value, you're like, well, it's okay, because I want it. It means something to me. Or are you going to look around and say, oh, crap, I got to get rid of this stuff fast?
Yeah.
Because where are you going to be when that ball starts slowing down?
Yeah. I mean, if Funko dies out tomorrow, it's nothing in my set that I would get rid of. I would keep it anyway because I bought it because I like it. And it's nothing in there that I want to get rid of. So if it falls apart tomorrow, I'm all right with it.
I just think that as hard and as fast as Funko has been moving, that when it stops, it's going to be like a train derailing. Yeah. Because they're grinding it. They're trying to justify that IPO.
Yeah, and they have to, because you're going to have to you got to satisfy those shareholders. And if those shareholders ain't happy, they don't want money back. Yeah. So, give them a year, see what happens in a year, how it looks, and what the shareholders say at the shareholders meeting. I think it's every quarter. They have a meeting, and they always send you the notes and stuff from the meeting. If you own stock, you get all of the paperwork from the shareholders.
Yeah. I wonder how their lawsuits holding out. Because they had shareholder lawsuits.
Oh wow.
There was, remember we talked about that a couple of months back.
Yeah, that can't be good. And that's probably another reason why they're pushing so hard. Because they got to pay off all the lawyers and any settlements they have to do.
Yeah, so it seems like as much as they make, they're spending it right back out.
And then they had that lawsuit with that guitar.
Oh, Fender?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that panned out either.
So that's a lot of money they're paying out. So are they even making money?
Probably not. They weren't making money anyway. That's
and
why
they got that new building they got to pay for, not unless the city gave them, those big companies usually get tax breaks.
Sometimes. But that's why they went public offering in the first place, was because they wanted to use that money to pay off their massive debt. And it didn't work out at the time. So I don't know where they are debt to earnings ratio right now.
Well, all of that stuff is public now, so you can find it. Because once you go public, all your financial records are public for everybody to see. That's the whole thing behind it. So.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh. Any other points? No, nothing else. Well, I'm sure somebody out there has some points. They probably think we're just being haters, but no, we're just being honest. It's something that's concerning a lot of people. It's something that's concerning a lot of people. They wonder about what's going to happen, and not to bring them down. I don't want to see Funko take a beating, but it could potentially happen. And are they going to be ready for it when things start to grind down?
Will it
is
be
the question.
Bounce back?
Yeah, will it come out back with something else? Exactly. So do you have any thoughts about that? Go ahead and post it in the comment section down below. Let us know what you think. Please give it a thumbs up if you got anything out of the video. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the notifications icon if you're new, and check out some of the other content. We do a lot more than just Funko discussions. We have a P.O. box where we can be reached. if you wanted to correspond with us, and we can be found also on Instagram. And that being said, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.
Bye.